Hello. Oh my God. Hello, hello, hello. Is my microphone working? Hmm. Doesn't look like it is. That's worrying. Let's see. Oh, okay, it is working. Okay, cool. It is working. Hello. And day 30. We are nearly done with the first month and we're here. So let us get started. Um I'm going to read from uh Genesis 15, 13 to 16. Then the Lord said to Abram, "You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction." That is not the reading for today. That's from Genesis 15. We read that a few weeks ago. Um, but I read that because that was God telling Abraham what was going to happen. And in Exodus 1 to 3, which is where we are today, we start to see that happen. So, Exodus 1, we have a brief recap of the names of the sons of Jacob, which become the 12 tribes of Israel. Um, And we're reminded that at the time of Joseph, when all of Jacob's family, all of Israel, came to live in Egypt, there were 70 of them, 70 people, 70 members of a family, of an extended family living in Egypt. Um, Under the protection of Joseph, who was the prime minister of the time and was effectively the savior of the whole world, saving them from 7 years of a very, very, very bad famine that followed 7 years of plenty. Pharaoh was very, very kind to Israel, very favorable, and had given them the best of the land, and things were good. But in verse 8, eventually a new king came to power. And here's one of the things that I think are interesting about reading the Bible that I think is worth pointing out, right? Oh, shout out to Demises. Thank you, thank you. um, the word new here, and I'm just going to bring up my Bible with strong numbers because I want to point this out. We've always got to bear in mind that the Bible was not written in English. Like English is by biblical standards, a fairly new language, here in the West. Um, it's not the language that the Bible was written in. It doesn't mean that we lose anything. There are of course turns of phrase and things lost in translation. But because we have, and I mentioned this, I think yesterday or the day before, because there are like scholars and there are people doing really, really important work to excavate and to search archaeologically for proof of this account, for proof of their lives, for the nature of their lives, for the nature of the society. We have people that understand the original language, and not just like one individual, two individuals. In fact, if you have a Bible that's translated by one individual or two individuals, that's probably not the best because you're taking one person's opinion, which, as we know, human beings can be flawed. But we have committees, we have institutions of people translating the original Hebrew, which we have access to with Dead Sea Scrolls, with broken pieces of pottery that people used to write scriptures on, little necklaces and stuff that people used to inscribe scriptures on. Um, and we have them translating that into the modern language. In some instances, with literary translations, trying to match it word for word and capture the original or closest translation to what was given before, or some people that dynamically try to translate it, and so try and capture the sentiments that's being in the original language and bring it into modern day languages. And so we don't lose anything, but it's worth us knowing that this was the case. And one of the reasons why is what I want to point out here, because when it says new, and I'm just trying to get, um, I love that my Bible doesn't give me like categories; it just gives me all the books that are there. I haven't been helpful. I've got lots of books for no reason. Anyway, cool. So in Exodus 1, verse 8, there was a new. New here, the word is Hadass or something. I'm butchering the pronunciation again. Um, but there is like there are multiple words for new. Okay, so if I get a pencil, right, which yeah, you can see now, a, a pencil, and now that that was dropped, I grab another pencil, but of the same kind. That's one kind of new, right? It's new, but it's just new of the same kind. Then there's a word like Hadass, which is the pencil fell, and I grabbed a um, a mechanical pencil this time. I grabbed this one. This one. It's a mechanical pencil. So it's also a pencil. It's also a new pencil, but it's a pencil of a completely different kind. This pharaoh was a pharaoh of a completely different kind. Now, whether that's just in his sentiments towards Israel, or and people believe this, it's maybe a pharaoh of a completely different lineage. But there was a new pharaoh that didn't know anything about Joseph and looked at the people of Israel multiplying, growing, and said, "These guys are going to be a problem. Let's make them slaves." Now, I want to just throw our minds back again to Abimelech, right? Abimelech, when he would come across Abraham, said to Abraham, "Let's go into a covenant where you don't attack me, I don't attack you. Let's have peace between our lands because we see that you're powerful." Abimelech did the same thing with Isaac. This idea of in those ancient times, a people group being so powerful just by their numbers, it was commonplace, right? And so Egyptians are seeing Israelites living in their land and are threatened just by their numbers. Now, this was thousands and thousands of years ago, but if you've been paying attention to the news, last year, were there similar sentiments about immigration in this country and foreigners being too many in this country? So it's not actually even that far fetched an idea. We, unfortunately, you've got things going on in America with ICE. History is just repeating itself, where people in a certain place see others come and live there and see just their numbers and think, these guys are going to be a problem. We need to do something about it. I don't want to get political. I don't want to talk about immigration law and all of that. I just want to point out that human beings have been human beings for a while, and the same things that they used to do there, interestingly enough, we're seeing repeated. Anyway, uh, so the Egyptians make the Israelites their slaves and are exceedingly like brutal with them. Um, working under super like poor conditions, being very physically violent with them. It's just it's horrible. And it doesn't stop there. Pharaoh actually starts asking people to kill babies. Even baby Thanos, they didn't want to kill him in Avengers, right? It was a bit too much. But Pharaoh literally gives the command, and he gives this order to Hebrew midwives, which either speaks to how deluded he was with his influence and his power, or how cold he was to not really care that these are Hebrew women, and he's telling them when the Hebrew women give birth and you guys go to help them deliver, if the baby's a boy, kill them. You know. Now the Hebrew wives didn't, and God rewards them for doing so. But Pharaoh eventually gives the order to all of his people. Yeah, he calls them back, and the midwives say, "Oh, they're Hebrew women. They're too strong, and they give birth before we can get there," which may or may not have been true. Um, but Pharaoh then extends the command to all of his people, and says, "If there's a Hebrew boy born, throw him into the Nile River, but let the girls live." Now, it's under these circumstances that Moses is born, and when he's born, his mother um, sees there's something special about him, but then eventually can't hide him anymore and puts him in the Nile River. Now, as I was reading this, I couldn't tell if she was at this point following orders. Like she had tried to save him, tried to keep him, but wasn't able to hide him any longer, put him in a basket and put him in the Nile. I can't help but wonder, was this, her giving up and giving up her son? That's not what's ever proposed because of what happens thereafter. But she did this, and the baby's sister is watching to see what would happen. So it doesn't suggest to me that they knew exactly. It might be that it was part of the plan. But from the first few verses of chapter 2, I'm wondering, was Moses' mother actually, given up? I mean, she waterproofed it, so maybe she was. Maybe this was the plan, send him down the river, see what happens, see if someone picks him up and is able to hide him better. Or just as a final goodbye, she waterproofs it, waterproofs the basket, puts him in, and Godspeed. Either way, uh, of all people, Pharaoh's daughter comes out, finds the baby, takes the baby, and the sister wisely goes and says, "Oh, let me get a Hebrew woman to come and nurse him." Goes and gets Moses' mother. She nurses him for a while, while receiving payment, nonetheless. And when he's older, she brings him back, and Pharaoh's daughter adopts Moses as his own, leading to Moses likely growing up in Pharaoh's own household. Um, as Moses grows, he's probably living in Egyptian sort of under Egyptian conditions, so probably living lavish, or not lavish, but living a privileged lifestyle, considering not a slave, definitely. But he's also still aware that he's Hebrew. And so he goes out one day, sees an Egyptian being especially violent with a Hebrew man, checks this way, that way to see that no one will catch him, and he kills the Egyptian. Next day, two Hebrews are fighting, and he goes to say, "You guys are brothers, why are you fighting?" And they're like, "Well, who appointed you our prince and judge? You know, what, are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" And this points me to like the sentiment that they must have had at the time, right? They must have known who Moses was, the Hebrew boy that lives in the Pharaoh's palace. And I don't think they liked him for it, you know, despite him killing the Egyptian for a Hebrew man. They quickly pulled that out against him, and he's obviously shook, runs away because Pharaoh also hears and tries to kill Moses, and goes to live in Midian. And there he helps some Midianite girls, draws water for them, such that they go back, and their father legit asks, "Why are you back so soon?" Again, when we saw Rachel offer to give water to Abraham's servant and feed his camels, I think we take for granted how much work that was, because here Moses, probably being stronger, being able to help um, draw water, did it such that their father said, "You guys came back sooner, because if it was just them, it probably would have taken a while, because it's not an easy task to do." Anyway, that's by the by. Um, but Moses goes to live with them, marries one of the girls, um, and is has a whole son, and he names his son Gershom because he has become a foreigner in a foreign land. Anyway, chapter 3, Moses is tending the flock of his father-in-law, who's called Jethro. He's around Sinai, and a bush starts burning without burning. He's obviously drawn to it. Moses calls out, and God calls out to him, "Take off your sandals, you're on holy ground." Um, and God gives Moses that big charge to go and bring the Egyptians out of Egypt. Um, and we've seen, and the reason I started back in Genesis is this was a fulfillment of that effectively prophecy that God gave to Abraham. Well, then God also said, inasmuch as they would be oppressed, at some point their cry would come out to him, and he would bring them out of Egypt. He would strike the nation that oppresses Israel, and they would leave, with wealth. Now we will eventually see why they actually leave with wealth, but God tells Moses here, and says he's going to perform all kinds of miracles. Tells him that the Pharaoh won't let them go, um, in order for him to perform these miracles. But we're about to see that great saga that is the Lord taking out the nation of Egypt at the time, in order to free his people and bring them to the promised land. So that's today's reading, Exodus 1 to 3. Tomorrow's reading is Exodus 4 to 6. And I hope this encourages you to pick up your word, spend some time with God. It's a late one. I'm going to go sleep. But I hope you have a good rest of your day, whenever it is you're watching this. And God bless. Peace.